Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'll be doing a review of the film from Brendan Fraser, the one that's making a lot of waves, no pun intended, called The Whale. This film by Darren Aronofsky, starring Brendan Fraser. This has been getting a lot of attention because of the performance given in the film by Brendan Fraser. Finally been able to see it. This is one of those films that I was waiting on before making any top 5, top 10 list of the year because I was just hearing so many great things about it. And today I'm going to give you my honest thoughts about it. I got to see it last night. Luckily, it was in a theater with about 4 other people in there, people who clearly love movies as they were respectful of everyone else. Very rare experience just in general, and I just wanted to mention it because there are some people out there that still respect the overall movie-going experience without talking or being on their phones, etc. But before going any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, that fire button if you're watching on Odyssey, and smash the rumble button as well. Also, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with the bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So first off, let's talk about probably the biggest strength that this movie has, which is the acting. This is something that has been hyped up a lot, and I will say that the hype is real. When it comes to Brendan Fraser's performance in the film, it is phenomenal. Also, kudos to the makeup effects team as well, because they were able to honestly make Brendan Fraser look like this incredibly large man, right? And this is what the film is ultimately about. It's this guy who's morbidly obese, has been eating himself basically to death because of an event and tragedy in his own life, which we'll talk about a little bit because, again, the story is where I kind of start to have issues with the movie overall. But speaking just about Brendan Fraser, I think that he honestly deserves all the attention that he's been getting. And one of the reasons why this character, I think, works in certain respects is because he is just such a lovable guy. I mean, I think this is something that many people have known about Brendan Fraser for a long time, that he always has had this type of charisma, this type of personality that he's always come across as a very lovable person. And I think that that is something that absolutely helps in this movie, because the guy in the film, the character in the film, is not lovable. The character in the film is actually downright despicable when you think about the things that he's done in his life and the things that he continues to do up until the very end of his life. And it's just honestly the only way and the only reason why you feel any sense of sympathy for him as a character at all is not because of the character or the way the character is written, but rather because of the performance given by Brendan Fraser, because of the heart that he has and the heart that he shows on screen. And I wanted to just, again, get the biggest positive thing out of the way first, because, again, I have a lot of negative things to say about the movie, but, again, the biggest positive that I can say and can confirm is that this is a film that Brendan Fraser absolutely shines in. Also, the supporting cast is pretty good, too. Sadie Sink plays his daughter in the movie, and she, of course, is known, if you've seen any of the episodes or seasons of Stranger Things. I think that she did also a phenomenal job here playing the daughter. Really was able to really kind of showcase her emotional range a little bit more in this film compared to the series, even though I think that all the kids in the series Stranger Things do a great job with it. Also, another supporting character here, Hong Chow, also did a very great job too, playing basically a nurse slash best friend of this character played by Brendan Fraser. So I thought that she also did a great job. And really, I thought all of them were pretty good. The one that I did have some issues with was honestly Samantha Morton, who plays his ex-wife in the film, right, the mother of Sadie Sink's character, because there were parts, especially at the very beginning, where when her character is introduced, where she's showing emotion and she's doing it in a very reserved way, and she's showing it in a very almost like a kind of like this more nuanced performance, and then she starts to get to the point where, you know, yelling is involved, and it starts to then fall into a bit of overacting. So again, with her character, it's one of those things where it's a bit over the top, I think, at times in the way that it's portrayed. But ultimately, I would say that the performance is just fine, and the acting overall is pretty darn good. Darren Aronofsky, right? He's known for doing a lot of very weird movies, right? Usually, as it says here, frequently in the form of psychological fiction, disturbing elements. And this is a movie that doesn't really have a lot of that. It's much more of a human piece, though there is definitely a sense of mysticism that exists, you know, in this film, especially towards the end, trying to avoid as many spoilers as I possibly can. But obviously, there are certain things that I think most people could probably gather about the trajectory of this character that are just a naturally progressing part of the story that it wouldn't really be much of a spoiler to actually talk about. But apparently this was based off of, I believe this was a play. Yeah, so the play The Whale by Samuel D. Hunter, produced by Darren Aronofsky, Jeremy Dawson, Ari Handel, etc. This is a movie that I think will get a lot of love from the Academy Awards and from a lot of the other awards circuits, as it's already been getting a lot of love and a lot of attention. But I don't think it's because the film itself is good. I don't think it's because of the performance necessarily of Brendan Fraser, though it is amazing. I think it's ultimately going to be because of the story. And this is where I have the biggest issues with the actual movie itself. As many of you know, I'm very open and honest about my faith, right? I am a devout Catholic. And this film is incredibly anti-religion and incredibly anti-Christian to boot. And it all stems from a character played by Ty Simpkins. He plays basically someone who evangelizes, so someone who goes door to door evangelizing people, which again, we can have a discussion about, right, just the state of people who do that and the character of people who do that. And sometimes there's that level of hypocrisy that exists within that too. But there are certain moments in the movie that just are so clearly, I mean, the character of Sadie Sink, for instance, or the character played by Sadie Sink, at certain points even says, like, here's, what I like about religion because, it makes you do this, or here's what I hate about religion, it does this. And so, again, there's a lot of commentary in the film that's very opposed to religion. And then also the basic and main storyline, and this is where I will get into some spoilers. So if you don't want to know anything about the story, then you may want to just, pause it right here, because this is where I kind of need to go off a little bit. So the basic premise of the story is, of course, he is a man who is suffering from, obviously, a type of depression because of an event in his life. And we find out from the course of the film that what we had here, again, so spoilers, is he was married, he had a daughter, and then he left his wife and daughter to be with another man. And so he abandons his family, he abandons his daughter at the age of 8 to indulge in his own passions. And that's ultimately what this story is about, it's about someone indulging in their own passions all the way up until the very end. The character is supposed to be, and I think, again, this is the way that it's being portrayed, or at least the way that I perceived it. It was almost as if they were trying to show some type of redemption arc, right? At the very end of his life, he's able to finally put others before himself. But the entire film, including the ending, is all self-centeredness. And it's so hard to really enjoy a character like this, and that's why it was so frustrating, because Brendan Fraser is such a likable person, but the character is just so despicable in every single way, right? I mean, it opens up with one of the first things you see about him is that he is watching pornography, right? He's watching gay pornography, for one. And then from the course of the film, you find out, he abandoned his family, he abandoned his daughter to be with another man. And then you find out, and this is where, again, it gets more into the anti-religion stuff and the anti-Christianity especially, is you find out that his partner, right, in the film, who obviously we never see at any point, that he had been a part of this group called New Life Church, which is often described as a cult, that basically, because he was a part of this church, and because he read scripture, because he read the Bible, and because he couldn't square his faith with the Bible, that ultimately it led to his own depression, his own basically stop eating, right? He stops eating food, stops taking care of himself, and then ultimately he takes his own life. And so that is then, so basically religion drives him to take his own life, right? Because, again, Christianity, dealing with, again, the indulging of self-passions and all the things like that, right? Again, there's a broader conversation there for sure. But again, that ultimately is what it comes down to, is that, the character that we don't see in the film, right, took his own life because of Christianity. The character in his own life, the character takes his own life because of the tenets of Christianity, is essentially what we get from this movie. And again, some people may disagree with that overall assessment, but that I think is basically on the surface exactly what the story is conveying. And so therefore, in response, Brendan Fraser's character also starts to indulge in the passions, right? So it starts indulging in food. So whereas his partner had been depriving himself of food to the point of being very sickly and then eventually taking his own life, in the other case, right, with Brendan Fraser's character, he indulges himself so much that it leads to his actual, his actual point of death itself. And so you have that element. And so then you have the character here of the, door-to-door preacher. And you find out more about his character, and you find out that he's a bit of a hypocrite as well, that he's a liar, that he's a thief, and all these other things. And there's, I guess, some type of redemption arc. But his character, honestly, I feel like only exists to introduce this New Life Church into the actual story. Because when you think about the character overall, he doesn't really do much else. He smokes pot at one point, and then he goes back to his parents, and that whole thing was supposed to be a way in which Brendan Fraser says, my daughter's actually a really good person. And it's like, I mean, I guess you're looking at your daughter through rose-tinted glasses with that one, but again, the character itself is mostly completely irrelevant, except for introducing this church into the discussion, into the picture. And of course, we find out that Hong Chow has a relationship with this church, that she had, again, left it and abandoned it altogether. And so, again, ultimately, I feel like this film is much more so a commentary and a commentary against religion and against Christianity than it is about anything else. at least, again, that is what I got kind of like hit over the head with over and over and over again. And to the point where it was just, again, it was so hard to really like this character. But then I kept coming back to the fact that it's like, but I do like the character because Brendan Fraser is portraying it. If any other person was chosen to be this role, I think that the role probably would have just been despicable to the point where there was nothing redemptive about the character, that there was nothing to like even about the character. There's nothing likable about the character. But ultimately, there is nothing. Like, the character himself is, again, despicable, because even at the very end, even though he knows he's going to die, even though he knows that he is indulging himself to the point of death, he's trying to bring himself back into his daughter's life, right? He's trying to show himself as being selfless in a way, but ultimately he's still not, right? Ultimately, he's not willing to change towards the end of his life. He's not willing to do anything to try to extend his life even just a little bit to try to, preserve his life. And then at the very end, he asks his daughter to read, right, read a paper, and I'm not going to go into the details of that just to avoid, full spoilers there, but to read a paper. And ultimately, it's not because it's actually doing anything for anyone else, but rather it's because of him. It's because it's all about him. And so if we were going to talk about this film as being a great character study about the results of vice in someone's life, right, and the results of indulging within the passions, right, indulging in gluttony and indulging in sloth and all these other things, right, the deadly sins, then that I think that absolutely that there would be something, good to say here. But I don't think that's what the intention of the film is, right? It seems that the intention of the film is instead to try to portray this character in a way where you feel sorry for him, when in reality you really shouldn't feel sorry for him in the way, right, that they're trying to portray it to be, right? The way that they try to get sympathy is more so from trying to bash Christianity and bash the concept of religion and the impact of religion on people's lives more so than anything else. So ultimately, the story then is what leads me to just really not really being able to endorse or support this movie at all, because again, the messaging within the film is just very, very clear cut, and it's very, very hard to be able to really go through it. And it's not an easy movie to watch. This is just, again, going back just to the general precepts. If you don't like darker films, if you don't like films that deal with darker themes, then you probably wouldn't enjoy this movie either. I would say the only reason to really go watch this movie is the performance given by Brendan Fraser. Because other than that, yeah, you have some, again, the film is well made. There's no doubt about that. It's Aronofsky, right? He has done film for a long time. He knows how to make good movies. But I do think ultimately the story does suffer from some of these pitfalls where you have these contrived characters like Ty Simpkins' character. You do have this, again, this in my opinion, this clear attempt to oppose religion and oppose Christianity, and make it out to, again, be this big bad, essentially, almost. So it's almost like that's the villain in the movie, is Christianity, right? Christianity is what leads to his partner dying. Christianity is what led to him, therefore, going into the state. Right? Christianity is what led to him abandoning his wife and child and not having a role in their life, etc. So that's, again, the way in which it comes across. And so overall, great performance by Brendan Fraser, great performance by the supporting cast as well. So I think all of them, right, really do deserve recognition for the work that they did. Also, again, I think that the direction overall is well done, again, as far as it just being a well-crafted film. But I think ultimately the story just does fall flat. And I think that the story overall is it's Oscar bait. I mean, this is the kind of thing that the Oscar voters are going to be like, oh, yes, absolutely. Anti-religion, anti-Christianity, or at least being critical of Christianity and critical of religion. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sign me up. Oh, in addition to that, we get a great performance from Brendan Fraser. Okay, awesome. Now we can even justify it further. Anyway, so those are my thoughts about it. If I had to give this film a grade, I'm going to go ahead and give it a C-. And really, the only reason why I give it even that high is because, again, of the performance given by Brendan Fraser, because it is honestly fantastic. The acting by him is phenomenal. The acting by all the other supporting characters is great. It's just sad that the story has to take this turn in such a way where, again, it was not a direction that I thought that the film was going to be going in. I thought it was going to be more of like a deeper understanding of Moby Dick and a deeper understanding of, because obviously the whale, right? There's this whole concept of him reading a paper about the book Moby Dick throughout the entire film. And so I thought that maybe there would be some connections with it a bit more than there was, but instead it turned into a very different kind of story that, overall I would say it's just one not worth supporting, in just my own humble opinion. But what are y'all's thoughts about it? Have you seen The Whale? Obviously, Brendan Fraser is great in it, but do you have any similar thoughts about the story? Because again, even beyond the anti-Christian stuff, I do think that there are some issues with the writing as far as some of the characters. I think Ty Simpkins' character is just mostly a throwaway character. That's just, again, the sole purpose within the film is to introduce this church and introduce that plot line and to introduce that story. And I think that there probably could have been a better way of doing it. Because I guess you could try and say that that's a story about redemption, and a story about redemption, all these different characters are trying to find redemption in different ways. But again, when it comes to the main character, he's just so despicable in all these different ways, from abandoning his family, right, indulging in his own passions all the way up until the very end of his own life, right, consuming food, consuming all the way until the very end, and even at the very end, taking advantage of all the situation around him, really just to feed his own self and to feed his own self-love, right, is, I think, it's tragic. So again, if the purpose of the film is to show you, right, where self-love will get you and the dangers of self-love, okay, that's one thing. But if it's to try to justify some of the actions that take place in the film, then I think it goes a little bit too far with it. So anyway, those are my thoughts. What are y'all's thoughts about the film? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, of course, we have the Oscar nominations coming out today. Sadly, the Oscars, they used to mean something. Now they don't mean anything at all because they've just become so hyper-politicized. But tonight, the Wednesday Raven Award nominations will be announced. We have our official list. I do want to say thank you to the 85 people that did put out their nominations. Obviously, I wish it could have been more. There were some categories where it came down to people being tied and having to make executive decisions. One category actually had it opening up to my Discord server to help me, kind of complete that overall list. Because everyone's nominations were all over the map. But luckily, the vast majority of the categories had very clear top 5 contenders and also had some very interesting nominations. So I would say most of the categories actually this year, I think, are pretty darn good. So it'll be very exciting to talk about that tonight on this channel, 7 p.m. Eastern Time for the Welcome to Asgard podcast. We will talk and go through those nominations. So anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you like the video, smash the like button, like the fire button, honestly, and smash the rumble button. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. The reason why I'm rocking the red lights is because it is the feast of Saint Timothy, who was a martyr of the church. So anyway, as you all know, something, again, big part of my channel is the liturgical lighting that I rock every single day. So you guys are great. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And as always, God bless.
And now for a huge shout out to all of my January Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. Starting off with my Patreon members, Father Luca Illich, Garrett Searles, Heimir Ari Hymason, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange Chat Reviews, who you can check out on his YouTube channel, Orange Chat Reviews, Rosetta Allen, who you can check out at her YouTube channel, Eagle Rider, and Miss Martin Muses, who you can check out at her YouTube channel, Miss Martin Muses, and of course, the amazing Empress of the Universe, Tina B, who you can check out over on her YouTube channel, Tina B, with her show Soup to Nuts, which she does, tries to do every single week with her friend and with fellow Valkyrie and fellow mod of the channel, Stephanie B.
And also a special shout out to the Modern Major General of the channel, Laura Story. Thank you again for joining.
And of course, I do want to give a special shout out to Tina B and make sure that everyone knows that our prayers are being extended towards her as she continues to recover from complications that have occurred recently with her medically and has resulted in a loss of eyesight, or at the very least of more clear eyesight. So to continue to offer our prayers for her. Also a shout out to my Subscribe Star peeps, Matt317, who can check out on his Twitch channel by the same name, The R, Fast Reaction, Mr. Roy, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and the K-Man, who you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my Locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, Brett D90, and the amazing lawyer Robert Barnes. So thank you all very much for supporting me on Local, Subscribe Star, and Patreon. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, please check out the top link in the video description below, where you get access to this, and also, of course, to a monthly podcast that I do with John the Flick Flickinger. Also, access to a giveaways channel on my Discord, where I give away films this month. I've got films like Seven Samurai on Blu-ray from the Criterion Collection to give away, The Banshees of Inisherin, Tommy Boy Steelbook, Edge of Tomorrow 4K, and tons of other 4Ks and Steelbooks as they get released over the next month will be be available, and also, of course, digital codes as well. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, check out that top link and join over on Patreon, Subscribestar, or on Locals. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.